In-laws trying to convince me to accept my wife's infidelity. Need help? Hey there. I need to spill some things out and ask for advice because I'm really losing it. And before I start, yes, the title is as bizarre as it sounds. My wife, 28F, and I, 30M, have been happily married for 3 years. I thought we were perfectly fine and in love, but a few days ago, she dropped a bombshell on me. She confessed to having an affair, saying she still loves me but wants us to be in an open relationship. I was shattered and asked her to leave so I could process this. Fast forward to this morning, and I got a visit from her parents, my in-laws. I've always had a good relationship with them and hoped they would back me up and help convince my wife that this wasn't fair to our marriage. Boy, was I in for a surprise? Her dad, a man I've always respected, started the conversation. He confessed to me that their marriage had been saved by agreeing to the same terms my wife was suggesting. They had entered into an open relationship years ago, and he said it had actually made their bond stronger. He told me that he wanted the same for us, and that accepting this would be a sign of love and maturity. I was dumbfounded and still trying to process this when her mother chimed in. And her words were just brutal. She outright told me that I wasn't satisfying her daughter's needs and that I was inadequate. She said I was being selfish and unloving by refusing to accept the new arrangement. Guys, I felt emasculated, betrayed, and confused. This isn't what I signed up for when I said, and quote, I do, end quote. I love my wife, but I can't just blindly accept infidelity. This isn't a lifestyle that I want, and it feels like an unfair and sudden burden that's been thrust upon me. I feel like my world has been turned upside down, and I'm being asked to celebrate it as if it's some great epiphany. Please, Reddit, any advice would be much appreciated. How do I handle this situation? Do I agree to try this open relationship to save my marriage? Or should I stick to my guns and risk the possibility of ending my marriage? Or is there any other way to resolve this issue? TL, the wife cheated and wants an open relationship. In-laws support her and even encourage me to accept it. My mother-in-law outright says I'm inadequate. I'm confused, hurt, and don't know what to do. Please, advice is needed. Update. Hey, Reddit. Brace yourselves for another unexpected twist. It involves my mother, and it's not pretty. Today, I got a surprise visit from my mother, accompanied by my mother-in-law. They walked in, and I could feel an ominous atmosphere settle. My mother, usually a jovial and loving woman, had a stern expression. End quote. Son, end quote. She began, her tone firm yet gentle. End quote. We've been discussing your situation. End quote. End quote. Yeah, I've noticed. End quote. I replied, crossing my arms. End quote. What's your take, Mom? End quote. She shared a glance with my mother-in-law, then sighed. End quote. I believe it might be best if you consider the arrangement your wife is suggesting. End quote. I was stunned. End quote. You're on their side? Why? End quote. End quote. Well, end quote. She paused. End quote. I've always been concerned that maybe you wouldn't be able to satisfy your wife due to your physical inadequacy. End quote. My mouth felt open. Here was my mother, the woman who raised me, echoing my mother-in-law's cruel words. I felt a rush of betrayal, sadness, and embarrassment. I asked them both to leave, needing some time alone. Feeling like my world was spinning, I called my father. We weren't the closest, but he'd always been straightforward and honest with me. I quickly explained the situation. End quote. Jesus, end quote. He grunted over the phone. End quote. Your mother said that? I can't believe it. Actually, I can. End quote. His words took me by surprise. End quote. What do you mean, Dad? End quote. End quote. I'm not shocked she's supporting this. Your mother wasn't the most faithful wife herself. It's a big part of why we got divorced when you moved out. End quote. The revelations didn't stop. I felt like I was in a terrible dream. End quote. We need to talk, son. End quote. He continued. End quote. Let's get together, meet with a lawyer, and figure out how to handle this. End quote. So, that's the next step. My dad and I are scheduled to meet with a lawyer. I'm scared, hurt, and utterly confused. I'll update you after we've met with the lawyer. As always, any advice is welcomed. Update 2. Hello again, Reddit. Your support through all this has been genuinely invaluable, and I want to keep you updated. As I mentioned in my previous post, my father and I plan to meet with a lawyer to discuss the situation. We had the meeting today, and here's what went down. I won't lie. Walking into that law office felt overwhelming. But having my father beside me was a comfort. We explained everything to the lawyer, from my wife's desire for an open marriage to the insensitivity of my in-laws and even my own mother's hurtful words. The lawyer, a composed and stern woman, listened attentively. She explained that while the legal landscape around open marriages was complex, there were certain things I needed to be clear about. Firstly, she emphasized that my consent was critical. And quote, regardless of what anyone else says, you have the right to decide what you are comfortable with in your relationship. End quote, she stated firmly. Secondly, she made it clear that if we decided to divorce, my wife's infidelity could impact the outcome, depending on our state laws. She also touched upon asset division, alimony, and how any future infidelity could potentially affect these things. Finally, she suggested we consider couples therapy before making any drastic decisions. This was not legal but a personal suggestion. She explained that therapy could provide a safe and mediated space for my wife and me to express our feelings and thoughts and perhaps help us find a resolution. However, I'm afraid it's far too late for couples therapy. I spoke with my wife an hour ago over the phone, and her response was, well, exactly what you'd expect. End quote. Therapy won't change anything. End quote, she said coldly. End quote. I love you, but this is non-negotiable for me. You either accept it or it happens without your approval. End quote. I was dumbstruck. The woman I had loved and married was standing in front of me, giving me an ultimatum that shook me to my core. In that moment, I felt something in me snap. With a heavy heart, I asked her for a divorce. To that, she just smirked and said, and quote, I'm not signing any divorce papers. We said for better or for worse, remember? End quote. I couldn't bear it any longer. I packed a bag and left our home, feeling more lost than I ever have in my life. I decided to move in temporarily with my father. The next twist in this saga? My mother showed up at my father's doorstep, berating him for supporting me and, end quote, encouraging my stubbornness, end quote. She insisted that I should be more, end quote, understanding, end quote, and, end quote, flexible, end quote, in my marriage. That was the final straw. My patience and goodwill, already hanging by a thread, snapped completely. I confronted her and called her out for her hypocrisy and infidelity. End quote. You're nothing but a cheating whore. End quote. I spat out, the pent-up anger and betrayal pouring out. End quote. You have no right to preach about understanding and flexibility. End quote. She left in a huff, clearly shaken. I've never spoken to her like that before, but in that moment, it felt justified. So, here I am, living with my dad, unsure of my next step. My wife is refusing to divorce, my mother is unsupportive, and my world has been turned upside down. But I'm not giving up. I'm going to fight for my dignity, for my rights, and for my peace of mind. I'll update you as things progress. In the meantime, any advice or words of encouragement would be much appreciated. Should I tell his pregnant wife? Honestly, I'm just really struggling with what to do and could use some advice. I, 34F, met a man, 32M, on a chat site a couple months ago. After a couple days of chatting publicly in a chat room and on cam, we exchanged Snapchats at his request. It wasn't remotely romantic at first. We just really seemed to hit it off, sending video snaps back and forth, learning about each other's lives, etc. For context, I am American, and he is Australian, so the times we could chat were kind of weird, mostly late afternoon to late evening for me and early morning to late afternoon for him, basically his work hours. After a couple weeks, we were literally sending snaps back and forth for like 7 hours a day, every day. Despite living across the world from one another, we related a lot. He told me 18 months ago that an 11-year relationship had ended, and a big factor in that was him and his fiancée having a miscarriage at 20-something weeks. This is something that really resonated with me, as I had a miscarriage in my last relationship that resulted in a breakup. Plus, I had also been in an 11-year relationship. Aside from that, he was just the nicest, most caring guy I had ever spoken to. I felt so seen, listened to, and respected. He was constantly telling me how in awe he was of my beauty, passion, and intelligence, and things started to get kind of romantic and ultimately sexual. There were videos, pictures, and the whole shebang. However, it was not at all just sexually driven. He was super respectful of me and constantly told me how he didn't just want something sexual with me, how he wished he could just come home to me every day, how special he thought I was, and that the more he gets to know me, the more he likes me. A month in, and we were sharing what I thought. every detail of our lives with each other. We talked about past traumas. We would snap with our friends and family around, which he told me they all knew about me, and he was telling me how he was looking into tickets to America, which he said were, end quote, pretty expensive, but you're worth it, end quote. He was going so far as to say things like, end quote, I really, really like you. I'm legitimately falling for you. I want to tell you that other word, but I'll refrain. I want you in my life, like forever, end quote, end quote. I haven't felt like this about someone in a really long time. You make me so happy, and I just want to make you feel so special, end quote, end quote. The worst part of my day is when I leave work and have to go home to a house alone, and then you're asleep and I can't talk to you, end quote. Anyway, there were always a few things I found strange about him. He told me he hates technology and using his phone, so on weekends he chooses to just be out in nature with his friends and doesn't check it much. He also told me that, due to losing his son, he deleted all social media. I also asked him his last name, but a Google search of him turned up literally nothing. Well, yesterday morning, I decided to go super internet sleuth to try to find a trace of this man on the internet. He wears shirts to his job that have the name of the company on them. So I Googled that, his first name, and his city, and lo and behold, a link came up, but the last name was different. From there, I found an Instagram and a Facebook page with pictures of a wedding from January 2021. This man told me he was engaged but never married. I sent him a message once again asking him to confirm the fake last name he gave me, and he assured me that it was him. That's when I confronted him and said that I know he's lying, but I didn't specify what. This man crumbled like a house of cards. He told me he's married and his wife is pregnant. He said he'd been lying to me and her. He said he's a piece of sh*t, etc. He was freaking out about the possibility that I might ruin his life, and maybe I was already calling his wife. He asked me not to involve her. I didn't reply. At all. Within an hour, he had deleted his Snapchat completely, our only means of communication. I'm assuming he thought this would delete all evidence. What he didn't know is that I recorded myself on the webcam opening all of his snaps yesterday. This includes the first ones too, before he knew that I knew, where he literally starts by saying, end quote, welcome to the best part of my day, when I get to talk to you all day long, end quote. And of course, it includes his confession. Should I tell his wife? My friends are torn. I don't want to hurt a pregnant woman who will likely be blindsided. They've been together for 12 years, but I have to imagine he will keep doing this. And the level of emotional cheating is pretty severe. I mean, this guy would walk me around his house, their house, and say things like, end quote, yeah, I was originally building this house for my family to live in, but obviously that didn't work out. You can be the first one to use my bathtub, end quote. I mean, I think he's the absolute scum of the earth, and I hate him for what he's done to me, false hope after divulging to him my past heartbreaks and traumas, but what he's done to her is so much worse. Edit. Sorry, I wanted to add that it isn't confirmed that his wife is pregnant. My best friend and sister both separately mentioned that he could have lied about this to keep me from telling her. Edit 2. Just wanted to clarify that 99.9% of our snaps were all video, not text. So when I say he snapped with friends and family around, I mean they were in the videos, and he was like telling them to say hi. No idea who they must have thought he was snapping, but I know they heard my American accent. Also, because this was apparently confusing, I found out the other morning that he had been lying before he was awake. By the time he woke up, I had not sent him any accusatory messages, just one asking him to confirm his last name. So he wasn't suspicious at first, and his first messages to me of the day were his usual incredibly happy or sweet self. Knowing he lied and realizing I had no proof, I turned on my webcam to open all of these snaps and try to capture how he spoke to me in case I needed proof, not yet knowing if he even was still married or whatever. TL.DR. I met a man across the world on the internet. We proceeded to have an emotional and sexual relationship. I found out he has a pregnant wife. Should I tell her?